Hi, I'm Craig. That's my brother Brad. Welcome to Weekdays with Craig and Brad, episode 44. Hello, Brad. We made it.
Oh, 44.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
I know.
What? I was expecting a different number when you said that. And then you said
Nope.
44, and I was like, oh.
After 43, but before 45. It's crazy how that works out.
I know. But gosh, these episodes go by so fast. And here we are,
I know.
just knocking them out one after another, like dominoes.
We're going to be the
taking over
guys
the
who are
internet.
they'll be like, hey, episode 1347.
Yeah.
That'll be
We
us.
made it.
We made it.
Yeah. Our beards, we'll have big long beards and like it'll just look like the apocalypse. We're still doing it.
Here's my hope. My hope is that our viewership numbers always stay above the number of episodes we do.
Yeah, that's a good.
I think that hopefully that's the goal.
It's a good hope. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to episode 1,757,625.
Hopefully by that point we've gotten our crap together.
We'll see. We'll see if they cancel us before then. Today's going to be a really, really good show. Exciting show. Tonight we have something. Listen, I need everybody to do me a favor and give this episode a thumbs up if you're watching over on YouTube. If you're watching over on Twitch, look, that's awesome. The reason why we're live tonight is because we got a knockout today during my 1 to 3 stream, which was outstanding. So we're live tonight. I see Josh coming in and Tom and Indy Jones joining us, man. We're going to have an excellent show because tonight is the night where we have the YouTube comment of the day. Well, we actually have more than that, but I want to point out, that Shinmu Owns came in with this one. Brad, go ahead, read it.
All right. It says, it's the little things in these shows that make them great. I never heard of Scott Steiner math before until today, so I searched for it, and that was pretty funny. Maybe you should have Scott Steiner on to explain your analytics and your chance of getting COVID wearing a mask versus not wearing one. Yeah.
There you go. If you guys haven't seen Scott Steiner's math, go watch it on YouTube. It's outstanding. It's the best thing in the world. So, man, lots of legends popping in tonight. I'm glad you guys are in. Thank you very much, Shinmu Owens, for that comment of the day. Congratulations. Yeah. You get 14 points for that. And I'll even throw in a double multiplier today. 28 points. That's 14 times 2. It's double impact day with double points. I love it.
Good. That was a little Scott Steiner math for you, although it was a little more accurate.
Then you divide it by 6 and you have no chance in beating me in a wrestling match.
I'm a genetic freak. Yeah, Fantastic. I had not heard of Scott Steiner math until I read that YouTube comment of the day, and then I looked it up. So there we are.
It makes you feel better, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, Scott Steiner's funny because after he finished wrestling, he actually owns a Shoney's.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so he
pretty awesome.
Heads on back to work and make sure that everything's running okay over there.
Eats all the chicken and steak. That's what he does.
That's what he's got those muscles. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. He's freely admitted the amount of steroids that he's done.
Okay. It's not chicken and steak. It's straight up steroids. Okay.
I'm pretty sure he just took the needle directly into his biceps.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Speaking of, have you seen those guys who man, what a weird segue this conversation goes. Have you seen the guys who have like the really crazy muscles that like they inject themselves with stuff to make their muscles huge?
No, I have not. I mean, I've seen crazy muscle guys before, but I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about silicone muscles?
Kind of. It's really pretty good. Let me see if I can find something real quick because this is it's pretty disturbing. That's right. Yes.
Well, I always thought like the guys that got like super ripped naturally anyways, whether steroids or not, like that's pretty disturbing because like it's just like, whoa, good grief, you have a lot of muscle.
Okay. Listen, I need you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Close your eyes.
Okay.
And I'll tell you when to open them.
Okay.
All right. And
I'm scared.
All right, Brad, listen.
Oh, no. I'm so scared, Craig.
I need
Please
you
don't
to.
give me a nightmare.
All right, Brad. Go ahead and open your eyes.
What are you doing? What are you doing? That's not even a muscle. That's like a Popeye cartoon.
That it's funny you say that because just we're Russian Popeye says he could end up disabled and he could get his arm chopped off. Man, if we could have any more
Oh my
things moving
gosh.
on this screen, that'd be great. Golly.
Bad.
Yes,
Wow.
may lose arms after oil jabs.
It looks like
Ugh. Ugh.
he's got legs for arms, but they're not even legs.
Look at this. Look at oh my god.
I don't know about that. That's not for me. I'll
Oh
tell you that
wow.
much. It almost looks like a reverse. Like the bulb should be on the top and then his front area should be underneath. Well,
Oh my
congratulations.
god.
God, what are you supposed to be like Bane?
Oh,
That's
gross.
Bane. He's a real life Bane is what he is cuz he gets injected with stuff.
Like, how does anybody find that like remotely attractive?
He does.
I mean, he looks happy with it. I
Maybe
guess. I don't
maybe
know.
he's got a girlfriend or a wife or somebody or
Hey,
maybe his
DJ,
mom's like, "You're so strong."
DJ Mike Fury says it looks like a tumor. Well, guess what, DJ Mike Fury? It's not a tumor.
It's not a
It's
tumor.
not a tumor. You set that one up really good. There you
Oh
go.
my God.
There you go. Indy throwing up there. It's not a tumor. That's right. Man.
Wow. That's thanks for sharing that with me. I'll have
Yeah.
some nightmares tonight.
That's what you call an arm day. Okay. So look, here's the thing. Today's episode is very, very cool. I have said since the start that you need to be your own journalist. And we've talked about Texas several times on the show, the idea of Texas potentially seceding from the United States. It's something that was brought up back in November. And we had an opportunity. I reached out to the representative who actually was bringing forth this bill in the state of Texas that we live in. And this show is about us. It's about us. It's about you. And we live in Texas, and we find this extremely fascinating. Mm-hmm. So we actually had an opportunity to sit down with Representative Biedermann, is his name, who put forth the Bill 1359, which is a House bill in the state of Texas. And we had a 15-minute conversation with him literally 45 minutes ago. Here's the thing, though. The program that we use, StreamYard, to record this podcast, you can put videos in, which you see whenever we do, fun things like this. The YouTube, right? But they can only be so long, and they can only be so big. So I had to chop it down and actually bring the file size down. So we're gonna go through it in 4 different parts, just smaller parts, like 4-minute parts, and we'll kind of talk about it as we go through. If you want to watch the entire video, I'm going to upload it to the YouTube channel in its entirety, all 15 minutes and 15 seconds of it, for you to watch in its entirety without us actually stopping it and talking about things in further depth. Maybe we watch things a little bit more than we saw. So I'm very excited about this. Continue to talk about this as you keep the comments going, because I'll be able to pop them in as we go, like Noodles coming in and saying swole. So I'll keep an eye on the chat if you guys want to talk about it, talk about the discussion. I'll tell you this right now: Representative Biedermann is a Republican. He makes no bones about it. He is a Republican. He a very red Republican. If that offends anybody of you, I'm sorry. We will speak to anybody. If there's a Democrat who opposes this bill, I'd love to speak to them as well. Or if there's anybody who opposes the bill, this is just something that was intriguing to us. So we wanted to do a little more research on it. And the idea of being your own journalist is very important to me. What are you gonna say, Rob?
I was just gonna say he's this extremely nice guy, and extremely grateful that he took some time to talk to us and our gigantic following. Huge following. So you're gonna notice that the video looks a little degraded. When it hits YouTube, it'll be full quality. It's just a ridiculous it kind of looks like Brad's camera does now, right? Let's just be real. Well, it might look worse than that, and that'll make me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
If it
Well, that's
looks
good.
worse than my camera, then I'll feel better. But
You'll get a trophy for that.
look, it's not the quality of the video, it's the content in the video, okay? And as you can see when you watch this side of the screen, you get so much better content. I mean,
Dandy asked a question: does the bill apply only to Texas? Well, he is a Texas representative, so yeah, it applies to Texas. But we get into that later in the interview, which you'll find shortly. So let's get into this. This is part one. It's only about 4 minutes and 33 seconds long, and we'll be back. So like I said, please continue the conversation. Hopefully, you guys find this interesting because we found this absolutely fascinating, and we're really glad we had an opportunity to speak with them. So here we go. All right, joining us now, as we always like to do our own journalistic work here, we are joined by Representative Biedermann of the state of Texas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about some of the things that I'm working on here in the great state of Texas.
Hey, well, as Texans, we're very passionate about this. We've spoken about this several times on our podcast, but our stance is be your own journalist. So, because you just never know, right? So we thought we'd go straight to the source. So what can you tell us about the bill you put together, 1359? Tell us more about that.
Well, you know what's really interesting about the bill? We introduced it, or actually announced it, 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to give everyone a lots of chance, especially those in the legislature and the leadership of the state of Texas, to know what was coming up. And so 2 months earlier, we announced it, and then I actually filed the bill on Tuesday. And it's the bill that's actually let Texans vote on on independence of Texas. And so that was we filed it on Tuesday, and the response has been just overwhelming for positive, 90% positive for this bill. Yes.
Do you feel that, sorry to interrupt, do you feel like this has a direct impact on what we're seeing? Texas is generally a pretty red state for the most part. It kind of wavered a little bit this year, but obviously, what's going on in Washington right now, there's a change, obviously a change in power, and things are kind of going a little crazy. So do you feel like this is the response of positivity is a response to that?
Well, you got to remember, this is, people's dissatisfaction for Congress and our federal government has been going on for many, many years. Their approval rating is one of the lowest. I think it's below even used car salesmen. And so that's not anything new. I believe that President Trump awakened a lot of people about the swamp and about what's really going on in our federal government. And so it's not really the election that just happened. This has been going on for a long time, but people really feel that the election was not done the right way. It wasn't fair, and that we don't have anybody right now in Washington that's listening to the people. So they're looking for some way to continue just the amazing work that Donald Trump did by listening to the people, draining the swamp, and bringing back America. And of course, "Make America Great" was his saying, but it was much more than that. It was more about the Constitution. It was more about listening to the people and putting the workers, the senior citizens, the veterans, our police, and all those people first, and not the politicians.
Mm-hmm. So what does this look like? Obviously, the bill is there. It's essentially, the idea is we want to put together a task force, really, just an idea of a group of people to actually discuss the idea of a Texit happening. Yes. Is that more the idea, right?
Well, a lot of people thought it was secession. Well, this bill is not about secession. It's not about leaving the Union with a vote. It's about asking our legislature here in Texas to give the people's voice the chance to basically make our state legislature to determine, is it feasible for Texas to not only leave the Union, but is it feasible economically for us to be able to be a state that can take care of our people, a state that is able to, be successful on its own. And so that's what the bill is. The people are going to vote, and then the state of Texas is going to be forced, in a way, to set up a committee to determine if the feasibility for us to be able to leave the Union and then we vote again after that. So it's a process like Brexit. So
Sure.
it's a little bit different than just voting for session and then we're left in limbo and people are worried about, hey, what do we do now about, are we going to be attacked by the federal government? Are we going to be able to pay our Social Security? All those questions will be answered first before anything happens.
So you can tell a lot of questions immediately, and it seems like Representative Biedermann has really, they know they don't have all the answers right now, but the idea is to put together at least some sort of task force to think about the idea of this whole thing. So interesting.
I'm wondering if anybody in the chat or anybody on YouTube that went through Brexit wants to comment about, their observations of watching that happen, and if they have any perspective on that.
Right.
Because there's very much a parallel going on there, and he mentions Brexit a few times in the interview. So,
right, yeah, it's pretty interesting to see what happens. As we continue the interview, like I said, it's broken up into 4 little parts. If you guys want to watch the full thing, it'll be available on YouTube in its entirety, so you guys can watch it. But yeah, man, this is I feel pretty good. So, Cree says Brexit. I still don't know what's happening. Have we left yet? Yes, Cree. I believe you actually have left the European Union. And we actually talk about Brexit a little bit, but let's continue on with part 2.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably the question. Brad and I were talking, and Brad, feel free to chime in whenever you want about this.
Sure. I'm listening intently. I'm fascinated by all of this. So, thanks for being here. But go ahead, Craig.
So my thought was, obviously, if there's a timetable for this, is this in the next, and let's say everything, this group comes together, people are like, okay, let's make this happen. We answer a lot of these questions. What do you feel is a realistic time frame for this? Number one, do you feel like this can realistically happen? What's a time frame for it? What type of money are we using? Are we not using the dollar anymore? There's so many questions they have.
Well, just think, how inefficient is the federal government? And the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, we are dissatisfied or we don't feel the federal government is meeting our needs. And of course, with all the debt and this stimulus package, and no matter what they've done, it's a broken system. And it's un-American if Americans do not stand up and bring our grievances to the federal government. I mean, we love America. We love the flag. We love our Constitution. And the Constitution states that the people are the ones really in charge. And what's happening is we've got a monopoly at the federal government that's not listening to the people. So timetable wise, if we don't start now, Texas only meets once every 2 years. And so if we don't do something now, we have to wait another 2 years to start the process. So the process is basically needs to happen right now. And so the Texas legislature needs to allow the people's voice to be heard. So let Texans vote. And then in November, we'll vote. And if Texans vote yes, then the state of Texas will form a committee to look at the feasibility of Texas being able to leave the union. And that would then include the military and Social Security and our border and all the questions that people have will now be answered not by opinions or not by just people that think they know what's going on, but it'll actually be answered by our legislature. And then once that study is done, if they have until December of 2022, which is about a year and a half, they have to bring the plan back to the state of Texas, back to the people. And if it's favorable, then the people will vote. Do we want to leave? So
but in 2022.
Yes.
Wow.
And then we go to the federal government and we work out all the details there with the federal government. Remember Brexit, the last thing they dealt with back in December after 5 years was fishing rights. So, it's a process, but we need to start the process now. And people just truly are very frustrated with what's been going on with our country. And it's certainly not the country that people in World War II fought for. It's not the country that people back in the Revolutionary Wars fought for. And it's not what our founders hoped it would be, although they put a lot of precautions in the Constitution, which was amazing to protect against this. But here we have a tyrannical government And Texas is in the crosshairs right now of the federal government. And Texas needs a lead because the rest of the country is looking at Texas.
Isn't that fascinating?
Right. I re-listening to that for a second time after being a part of it, hearing that we could be voting on potentially leaving the United States by 2022, next year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's he's coming at it from a very level-headed, perspective. I'm the more as we were sitting there interviewing him, I was taking it all in. I didn't really have too many questions because there's so much information coming at us that I was just thinking about how much he's right. Like, the government has been tyrannical. That was his word. And me, like I've said it several times on this show, like, why, at what point in the last 4 or 5, 10 years did we all just go, yeah, we'll just, trust the government. They've got our best interests in mind. So
Right.
it's interesting.
It's funny. Iceman says, "Is it actually viable for Texas to secede?" I'm glad you asked that. We'll get into that here in just a second with Representative Biedermann for sure. Noodle says Representative Biedermann sounds like a sensible person. Explaining the process is extremely helpful, and that's exactly why we wanted to have him on. Like, this goes back to the idea of be your own journalist, right? If you want to know something, go out and find it. To Representative Biedermann's credits, I spoke with the Chief of Staff, Ms. Dyer, who helped organize this, and it was just a simple email. Look, we would love to speak with Representative Biedermann about this. This is their job. If you want to know about these things, you ask. And I think that's one of the things that really drove me to do this. I always say, well, be your own journalist. So that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah. Chancho says, I think this guy's aiming to make a political statement. As a Texan, this is not viable. Well, we'll talk more about the viability of it from a financial standpoint as well. And it's funny because before we actually started this the interview, I don't think anything was really off the record, but we talked to him for just a brief second before we started recording, and he goes, "Some people think this is a publicity stunt. This is not a publicity stunt. Like, we are doing this, And he said that before we got started. So it's crazy. Nick says, "Come join Canada, Texas. We have oil." we do.
Yeah, we got a little bit of that.
Health Warrior says, I mean, it would have sounded crazy, but anal swabs, so anything's possible.
Yes. Reference back to our last episode. That I joked with Craig. I was like, oh man, if he looked at the title of our last episode, I don't know if he'd want to be on this show.
Right. All right, nice. Well, let's continue on. Move on to part 3. We're going to get into kind of the viability of this thing, if this thing is legit. Guys, thank you again for popping in tonight. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this. You find this interesting. Like, this is something that's interesting to us, which is why we're talking about it. Hopefully it's interesting to you as well. This is really an interesting topic for me. I found an article from about 4 years ago where Governor Abbott, he mentioned that the GDP of Texas would be, if Texas was to leave, it would be a top 10 GDP in the world as its own country. Which is pretty fascinating, is in front of Canada and even Russia and Australia, these big countries that you see. So it's a pretty fascinating thought when you put all these things together, to think that Texas could potentially do this.
Right. Well, more than that, sorry, Craig, but more than that is we're one of the few states that owns most of our land. 95% of the land in Texas is owned privately, not by the government, where most other states are either state-owned or federal-owned land. We have our own grid system, which other states do not have. We have so many resources and things working in our favor, but the biggest part is the country's looking for leadership. And the federal government has just been overreaching in their abuse of power over the states. And unfortunately, the states have allowed it to happen. And that's wrong. So we have to begin to start bringing that back. So whether we have Article 5 Convention of States, we need them to be getting involved. We need other states to get involved and and we need to push back against the federal government. That's American. That's what our Constitution says, and that's what our founding fathers want us to do.
Can you talk a little bit about in the Texas Constitution in particular? Texas is kind of a unique situation because it was its own country before it was brought into it was its own territory before it was brought into the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
in its own constitution, it references the idea of reworking the government or something along the. You put it in your press
Mm-hmm.
release, which
Yes.
puts Texas in kind of a unique situation as opposed to Nebraska or California or anyone else really.
Well, yes and no. So a number of states did not allow their own state to be able to leave the union. They actually said we cannot. Texas actually said that according to the people, we give the power, we give the authority to the people to make the choice if their government is not following what they should be doing. So we don't have a unique situation based on the fact that we're just Texas. We have a unique situation because our Constitution gives the people the power, as well as the federal Constitution gives the people the power. But there have been some Supreme Court rulings that people are using to say we can't leave the union. Well, we know what a Supreme Court ruling is. That's not law. That's an opinion. And so that needs to come back to, that'll need to come back to, that'll be a legal issue that we'll have to fight when the time comes. But again, it's really about the people's voice being heard by our legislators. And unfortunately, our legislators are not listening to the people. And they've got their own club, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or whether it's in Texas. And they don't really want the people's voice to be heard. This is all about let Texans vote, and then let's start this process.
I'd like to welcome everybody coming in from Cheapy D's stream. Thank you very much, Cheapy, for sending everybody over here, by the way. Especially Pew Pfeiffer says, this sucks.
All right.
Well, thanks for popping in. So just so you guys know, what we have going on here is there was a bill that was put together where this is a pre-recorded interview we did literally about an hour ago with the representative who put together a bill about just simply stating the idea that maybe Texas could explore the idea of potentially becoming its own country. So we live in Texas. We thought it would be interesting to talk to Representative Biedermann and actually ask him questions himself. And he was kind enough to come in and talk with us. So I know that this is not everybody's cup of tea, right? But like I said, again, the show is about us. The show is about you. The show is about what's important to us and what we like. And we thought we'd talk about this with you guys. I would love to hear, like, I know Cheapy's from New York, and this is probably so far off his radar, he doesn't even care. But Cheapy, I would love to hear your input on this, man, and your thoughts. And if you just think all Texans are crazy, it's great, man. Love it. But I really do appreciate everybody coming in from Cheapy's raid. If you guys are new, hopefully hit the follow button. This is my brother Brad over here. I'm Craig. You may recognize me from this old thing I did called Screw Attack or Game Attack a long time ago. And now me and my brother do a podcast every day over at youtube.com/Craig Skits. So if you like daily podcast, it's really short, like 30 minutes long. You can come join us and hit the subscribe button over there or the follow button here. We'd really appreciate that. So,
and just to be clear, all Texans are crazy. We are crazy. And I think that if you were to call any one of us crazy, we'd be like, yeah.
Yeah. They say this, about Texans. Texans feel like Texas is the greatest country in the world already. Like we're very proud of our state. And, it is just a state. And I think that's one of the things, Cree is from overseas and Cree's like, well, I don't understand. I don't understand all this stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. So, Texas is just a different state inside. A state is just an entity inside of a bigger country. So that's kind of the whole idea. So there you go. Super Mario the Hedgehog says, even if I'm in a different state, I have friends in Texas, and I think this interview is quite interesting. And what? And what? I don't even know. Oh, my God. P. Powerman says, you have a state that wants to leave, and Puerto Rico wants to join the USA. Yeah, and apparently Washington, D.C. is going to be a state soon. Like 16 feet of it. So,
well, here's the deal: if Texas was to leave, you'd have to have two states join up the United States to make up for Texas, or more.
Yeah, well, just
You
from
know?
a state standpoint. Driver Joel says, I just moved to Texas. What did I get into? The best state in the world.
Look, I'm happy to be here. We've lived here our whole life, and you know, I'll say this much: when I spent about a good decade of my life, my 20s, traveling the country, thinking I want to move. I'm going to move to this state or this state, this coast, that coast. And after traveling the country, I realized Texas is where I want to be. It's the right pace for me. And soon enough, not long after that, everybody else in the country realized that. And that's why they're all coming here.
I mean, we're seeing a huge influx of people right now. It's an economic hotbed. It's you know, it allows people to live their lives the way they want to live it, and you know, as Representative Biedermann says, you know, make their own choices, which is pretty amazing. So
Yeah,
and that's why we love it. Let's see, real quick. GF Raptor fan says my fam in Texas told me that Texas is set up to be its own country. Well, we talked about it for sure. You know, we talked about the logistics of it. So once again, if anybody wants to see this interview in its entirety, it's going to be up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/CraigSkits, probably tomorrow. You know, and we'll put the whole thing up in its entirety so you can rewatch it without us kind of stopping and going. So. Iceman says, would you consider Texas more libertarian than anything? No,
but it's a lot of really angry Republicans right now, and that's what he's talking about. A lot of people that feel unheard, you know, that feel like the government's not listening to them, and so that's what's sort of, I think, going to drive this whole movement.
Right.
Is that we want, you know, like Texans want to be heard. Texans want to be in charge, you know.
Real quick, P. Powerman says, this politics always just want to be updated. If so, or current world affairs. Very rarely do we do politics. Mostly, yesterday we did a show about COVID butt swabs.
Yeah.
The show before that we did a show about the Knight Rider kit car being sold for $300,000. It's really whatever we want to talk about. So hopefully you stick around and you find it.
Yeah,
so.
Check out the YouTube channel. Go watch some of the old episodes. You'll get the vibe.
Right. TJ says, just moved to Texas 3 years ago. My wife is from here and always talked about it like you needed a passport to enter. So far, I like it. It's a pretty good place. Hyad says they had 4 years. You know, look, hey, I hear you. It's crazy what happened. You know, it's interesting. Dandy says, well, is it angry Republicans or angry Trump supporters? I would think it's angry Texans more than anything else.
Yeah. I think any American that, you know, as far as the election goes, any American, however you voted, if you don't feel heard by your government, it's going to cause problems. And there's a lot of people in this country right now across the board. You know, you could argue, yeah, they're all Republicans. You can lump everybody in a bag, but on this show, we don't try to lump people in bags together.
We don't
try to blanket label people. We just look, you know, like, you know, maybe I said angry Republicans, but angry Americans, you know, that don't feel like their government. I'm one of them. You know, sometimes you feel like the government's stepping on your toes a little bit with your rights, you know, and you're like, hey, what about listening to us instead of just doing what you want to do? And I think that's what's driving this thing.
Right. Well, let's continue on with the final part of the interview. It's just a brief 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Once again, if you want to watch the entire thing, it'll be up on the YouTube channel tomorrow, youtube.com/CraigSkits. P Powerman, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. And anybody else who wants the follow button, I greatly appreciate that. That's great. Zombie Impaler says, yeah, we can see Brad instead of just a block of pixels. Hey, we're working on the internet thing. Once again, if you want to go to patreon.com/CraigSkits to support the show, we are working right now to get this guy over here some better internet. We're going to make that thing possible.
I got some bad internet.
Tell everybody your upload speed.
What is it? 1.4?
1.4 megabytes per second. Here's part 4.
Sounds like kind of a test, you know. Can you let the people have their voice?
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
You laid out go ahead.
No, exactly. And how do you all feel that if you were an independent nation, as Texas was, we joined the nation because we were worried about Mexico. They were a superpower basically at the time. We were in debt as Texas at the time. And so we joined the union because it was for safety, for economic reasons and a number of other things. Today, would Texas join the union based on what the union's like today, what our federal government is like today? Well, we have oil. We have so many resources. We're the 10th largest economy in the world. Why would we ever want to join them? Now, do we want to work with them? Do we want to work with other states? Do we want to have a great relationship? Of course. Do we want our Constitution in Texas to be similar to the Constitution of the United States? Of course. Our founding fathers were godly, moral, virtuous people. And that's what's made America the superpower that it is. And I don't want to say superpower, but the place where everybody wants to move to, or everybody.
Right.
And so if we could change the federal government, there would be nobody who wants to move, would want to leave. But it's not America we want to leave. It's the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have you for about another minute or so. So I just had one last quick question for you.
Yes.
In the event, let's say 2022 happens and Texas is like, okay, let's do this. Let's actually look at this and actually see this as a reality. What is, obviously you mentioned there's several states, most states say that they can't leave the union. But are there any other states that could be like, let's just say Oklahoma or Arkansas, or just any connecting state around Texas was like, that's a pretty good idea. What if we want to be a part of Texas and say au revoir,
I'm getting emails and calls from every state and other legislatures that are interested. They're waiting to see what Texas does. And again, it comes down to the 10th Amendment. The rights that are not given to the federal government are given to the states and the people. So that's just very, very clear. States may have written in their constitution that, but they can change their own constitution. For us to change the Constitution of the United States, we have to have a convention of states, or there needs to be a vote, a 2/3 vote of both the Senate and the Congress and the House of Representatives. That's very difficult. So there's a lot that's going to happen because of this, and it's all because of the people. The people have the power, and that's where, like someone like President Trump got elected. That's where things can change in this country. And it's all about the people. Let the people vote. And then the government needs to listen. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, Representative Biedermann, we greatly appreciate your time tonight. And thanks for hopping in and explaining the idea of a Texit and the idea of your bill. For sure. Well, thank you very much for your time.
And if they want to sign our petition, KyleBiedermann.com, just go to our website, sign the petition, and a lot of answers or questions are answered right there. So God bless you. God bless Texas. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. All right. I want to point out real quick, hi Ed in the chat. This show is all about discussion. And I think it's really important to talk about these things real fast. Hi Ed said earlier, he said, before we got in, it says, I didn't feel hurt under Trump. And then he followed up with saying, this isn't going anywhere, fringe loonies. But I think if you were to listen to the entire interview, there's actually a lot of information in there. And just because it's something that you don't necessarily want to hear, or it's not interesting to you, doesn't mean that the idea is fringe or loony or conspiracy theory. That's just because it's not something that you want to hear doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think that's the wrong think that so many people have today, is that if it's not something that I don't want to hear, then, well, I just don't want to hear. I'm just going to quote, and that's exactly what this, exactly what is going on. Hyatt follows up with Texas isn't sending us their best, but they are sending more money than they're receiving from the federal government literally every single year. It's one of the few states in the entire union that sends more money than it gets back on an annual basis, which is pretty fascinating. So, who knows?
Yes, it's interesting. I like reading the little angry comments.
Like what? Which one?
Godly men. I hate religion and politics.
Jade.
Yeah. To each their own. I'm tired of hearing the word hate so much. And it's nothing on you. I'm just like, there's just so much of it going on right now. Like, we talked about it on the last episode. Can't we all just kind of try to just be quality people and respect that about each other and just be like, hey, you're in that, you're over there, cool, do your thing, and I'll be over here doing my thing. But I don't know.
No. Jade says, not angry. I just think it had its place. They're supposed to be separate. Church and state, yeah, for sure, supposed to be separate, for sure. I think Jade, to be clear, he understands it's not angry. It's just, but I'll say this: I think that Texas, the religion in Texas is a very big deal, very big deal. And there's a reason why. God bless Texas. You hear that? God bless Texas. There's a reason why people react so strongly to the national anthem, or having the Texas pledge. Like we have a pledge of allegiance to Texas that we say in our elementary schools every day. It's important to us.
Yeah. Well, the country is divided into it's essentially 50 little countries at this point. That's how divided the country is. It depends on where you grew up and what the culture's like, and what your family was like growing up in your neighborhood, and like Texas is its own thing. So yeah, it's going to be a part. I think religion and politics are it's hard to separate them here, because people have certain values and expectations on how to live.
Well, Hyatt, I appreciate you popping in today, man, and I hopefully you're up for a good conversation as well. Real quick, CDI says, "What does the Texas Pledge say?" Can you recite it, Brad? I can.
You can.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez, don't put
simple.
me on that spot. Which one was it?
It's super simple. Honor the Texas flag, to thee, one Texas, one nation, or one state under God, and indivisible, something like that. Something along those lines.
Oh my gosh, I better get in the books again. I don't think I've said that since elementary school. I'm terrible Texan. I'm embarrassed now.
Just a quick reminder once again, and just if you guys are watching live, I'll be streaming with Bruce Green and Party Pita at 10:30 tonight. So make sure you guys stick around. Real quick, Toastamac came in earlier with some bits. Actually said, "Is it weird to say that this idea scares me? How bad of a situation are we in that people are actually considering this a viable option?" I think it's a situation that we're, going back to Hyatt said, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel heard under Trump. And I think that's totally understandable, So what did you do? You did something about it. You administered change through votes, right? And I think a lot of people didn't feel heard under Trump. And you know what? That's fine. So what happened? There was a vote. There was an election. Now we have a new administration, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll go back to the beginning of the interview with Representative Biedermann, where he said, this is not something that has taken place over the last 2 weeks, or something that's taken place over the last 4 years or 10 years. This has been a consistent thing where, people are just tired of the federal government not listening to them. And, he said as much. This has nothing to do with what's going on in Washington right now as far as Biden. This has everything to do with just the overall idea of I'll say this. It's kind of like people ask me why I left Screw Attack, right? And I said, Screw Attack reached a point to where it was so big to where when we spoke, the audience didn't listen. And when the audience spoke, we couldn't hear them, right? Because it was muffled by death battle talk. And this person is going to win. And Goku didn't beat Superman and blah, 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 blah. That's why Game Attack was created, to make a smaller community to where when we spoke, they listen and they smoke. And when we spoke, and vice versa, right? That was the whole idea behind Game Attack and why I left Screw Attack to begin with. And I think that's kind of what, in a much larger scale, that's kind of what's going on here with Texas. At least that's the analogy, that's the metaphor I have in my head. Mm-hmm. So, real quick, there's some real quick things. Bearju says, if Brexit has showed me anything, I'd be concerned that Texas would have problems with diplomacy and making deals with a country it just left. I think that's why, the representative was talking about having these things squared away before they left, mm-hmm. But, who knows, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is all about, look, the government, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, is supposed to work for the people. And when the majority of the people, specifically here in Texas, the majority of the people are going to feel not heard. So they're going to do something about it. And that's just what this boils down to. So, and that's what our elections are supposed to be, right? Like when, if you don't like the way it's going, you're supposed to do something about it. You're supposed to vote. And so that's what his bill's proposing, is that we put together something that allows us to even vote for it. So it's a first step in a long process, but
It doesn't seem that long. If
But
he's
that's what
talking
I was
about
going to say. That's what I
2022,
was going to say. It's the first step in many steps, but it could actually happen. I should correct myself. It could actually happen by 2022. He had mentioned. So that's crazy to think that, sometime next year we could wake up and be like, okay, country of Texas, or however you want to say it.
Sam comes in, is interesting, says this parallels the start of the fall of the Soviet Union. I don't think I know enough of to have a real opinion, but I do find it concerning, and we'll watch where it goes. That's exactly why we're talking about it, because we live in Texas and we saw this, and that's exactly why we're doing it for sure. So, Chancho says this is a political ploy. Texas just wants to be heard. California did it under Trump, and Texas is doing it under Biden. Did California? I know California. There was talk, and I think I saw like an article about this. The idea of California breaking into 3 different states, several years ago. That was did you see that? Like there was a North California, South California, and then like a California.
I didn't see that. All I know is that I'm glad I don't live in California. That's nothing against the California itself. I love the weather in California, but like y'all, there's my Texan coming out right there. Y'all, I'm just glad I don't live in California.
Right.
It's just a mess right now.
It is. Yeah, well, they may have a new governor sooner than later.
And my question would be, why do you think so many Californians are moving to Texas? You got to put the pieces together a little bit.
Real quick, this article is from 2018. This is a investor. Yeah, Tim Draper. He's a big time investor. He's a billionaire. He suggested this, and I think this actually went to vote, I believe. But the idea of a Northern California, Southern California, and a California, where it essentially was built around like the industry and then farm, and then like Northern California, right? So it's kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah,
so
that is interesting. But at this point, it's like, what's the point? You have California, Southern California, and Northern California.
I think the idea was that California, like Texas, there's a lot of farmland in California where people think a certain way that they don't think like they do, and it's what we talked about before. It's the urban versus rural mindset.
Well, at least give them new names, not just Northern and Southern and regular California. Like at least change it up a little bit, like call it Californix. I don't know. Change it up a little bit.
Right. Jade saying, so Texas would require a passport to use our rivers. I'm originally from Arkansas. Nice. There you go, Jade. Chancho says they said the Western Seaboard would threaten to secede if Trump won again. We need to come together, not split apart. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's the whole idea. I think more than anything, it starts with talking and conversation, which is why we have these conversations, which is good. So
now, wouldn't it be interesting though if California led the way and Representative Biedermann said that he's getting messages from other states, right? Now, wouldn't it be crazy if over time Texas led the way and then one by one each state just came and stacked on top, and pretty soon the United States just became a new country, but it was still all of the United States, the original United States.
I found that fascinating. The idea that, like he said, he's getting calls from other, and they want to see what happens with Texas first. Can you imagine, like, if the central United States, the breadbasket of America, the Bible Belt, just kind of was like, yeah, okay, we are going to be the United States, but we're going to do our own thing over here, and we're going to, we're going to follow as close to the Constitution as it was, and we're just going to start over. It'd be really a fascinating thing,
We'd have the northern United States and the southern United States on a map, written on the map.
Right. Noodle says it's not a zany idea. I mean, hey, if 2020 and 2021 have taught us anything, is that anything can happen. So
yeah, absolutely. That's the funny thing. Like, is anybody surprised at any discussion at this point in time in history? Come on. We're witnessing history. We're living in history. That's something that everybody should acknowledge. I can go, wow, they're going to write about like these 2 years for a really long time. Kids are going to be learning about this. in social studies, geography, history books. It's crazy.
It is crazy, and that's what what's going on. But I'll tell you, it's a really fun podcast to do tonight. Once again, if you want to watch the interview in its entirety, it'll be up on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/CraigSkits. I'm gonna step up. I'm gonna get going in about 30 minutes. I'm gonna come right back, and I'm gonna play some Apex with Bruce Green and Party Pita. So I can't wait to do that. So you guys have an excellent night. Brad, thanks for coming on, and that was fun. We should do more of those.
Yeah, maybe we'll do another interview sometime with somebody else.
We were talking about this. Do you know that Representative Biedermann was actually the second person Brad and I have ever interviewed? Extra points if you can name the first person Brad and I interviewed. I'll look in the chat real quick. So
yeah, if you can guess that, and if you've got the answer to that,
put it in the chat or the comments.
Yeah, we'll reveal the answer on the next episode. How about that?
John, sounds good. Hyad says we need to figure out how to be the United States, not leave it. That's a fascinating conversation to have. And while I 100% agree, I think that there are plenty of spots in the United States that are literally being ripped apart right now. I would love to say that those people need to be united as well. So I think that there's something to that. I think we should absolutely be the United States. But let's look around and see what's happening and see all the riots that are happening and all the destruction that's happening and all the people getting hit by cars and Molotov cocktails being thrown. And let's try to unite them before we go anywhere else. I think that'd be a great
before we
place
get
to start.
more mad at each other that aren't doing those things.
Yes. There we go. Check it out. Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner. And when's it? There it is.
There we go.
Weird Al.
Weird Al was our first interview a few years back. What a great first interview too.
I know. It's Weird Al, Representative Biedermann. Let's go.
That's right. We're 2 for 2. Those are some great, good guests to have.
I love it. All right. You guys have a good night. We'll see you guys later. Go watch more episodes. They're all binge-worthy, waiting for you to go. And make sure you tell somebody between the ages of 18 to 49 that we exist. We'd appreciate that. You guys have a great day. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.